Welcome to
Release Readiness Live.
It is important to watch Release Readiness Live so that you get a snippet of the coming attractions of the functionality that's coming from Salesforce.
We really focus on the features that are going to be most useful and impactful.
With Release Readiness Live, you get the great opportunity to actually hear it from the mouths of the people who spend a lot of time thinking about what exactly you all as Salesforce developers and admins are actually wanting to see.
Your feedback is so important. I think that's one of the most amazing things actually about the Salesforce ecosystem is how involved Trailblazers are with evolution of our products.
Is RRL about to start?
Let's get it started.
Welcome to Release Readiness Live. I'm Carolyn Bathauer, Senior Customer and Product Evangelist. I'm excited and honored to be your new host. I love RRL. This is where we get to geek out and cover the new product innovations coming your way in the next release. We have an amazing team of Salesforce Flow experts here in the studio with me and joining virtually to walk you through some of the top new features in Winter 25. And you've probably heard of Agentforce, the autonomous agent platform for building and deploying agents across all Customer 360 applications. Well, good news for our Flow fans, Agentforce allows you to build agents using existing flows, Apex classes, and prompts. But just wait until you see Einstein-drafted flows and formulas. But before we dive in, I need to remind you to only make purchasing decisions on existing features and functionality. So with that covered, I want to thank you for investing your time with us today and for all the feedback that you provide. Your feedback is what helps our technology teams build solutions centered around your experience and helps make this broadcast better. So here's the agenda. Over the next hour, our product managers will give live demos highlighting the top Flow features in the Winter 25 release. That is going to help you automate, enhance performance, and build processes more efficiently. So come back tomorrow on day 2 for developer preview, Service Cloud, and a bonus episode featuring what's new with Health Cloud. And then day 3 wraps us up with CRM analytics and admin preview. As always, all of our episodes will also be available on demand on Salesforce Plus. And along the way, we want to hear from you and answer your questions about these new features while we have these experts with us. So join the chat on Salesforce Plus and drop your questions in the Q&A tab. We've got a team of product experts standing by with answers. And we'll also take some of your questions live. And if you still have questions after the show, you can post them in the Trailblazer community using the hashtag SalesforceRRL. So let's go. First up, it's a legend. Diana Jaffe, Senior Director of Product Management, is here to cover new enhancements to data management and actions in Flow. So welcome, Diana. Show us what's new.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. I am super excited to be back here at RRL and talking about all things data and actions in Flow. So to kick us off, we have really big, exciting new enhancements to the send email action. This is something a lot of you have been asking us for a long time. You can now send those emails not just to 5 people, which is what it was before, but 150 people. So that's, a 30 times improvement. We've also added in options to CC and BCC your recipients, as well as just put them in the to line. Now, I know we're talking about the future and AI, but a little tech trivia. Comment in the chat if you know why it's called CC and BCC, what that stands for a little bit of a history lesson as well. So, all right, that's what's coming in the send email, but I'm going to actually jump right into the demo now because I want to show you what's going on inside Flow. So to start off, we have a couple familiar friends here that you'll see. Some of our characters, and we're going to do some automation around that. So if I go over to my flow, I have a pretty simple screen flow to let me go through and edit all of those characters. And now this is using our new repeater element, but Sam's going to tell you about that later. I'm not going to get too much into it, but we're going to look through our different characters, and we're going to make some updates. We have a lot of new stuff coming. So Albert Einstein, we're going to call him a genius. And I think Astro, in addition to being a trail guide, we're also going to call him an agent. We got a lot of new agents coming. And to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of Awesome Admins, we're going to say that Cloudy is awesome. But we have some other characters here, maybe a new one that we want to add to that list with Flow. So we're going to add flow in as well. So if I was doing this in the past and wanted to build this out as an experience and then put it behind the scenes here in Flow, I would have had to split this out. So I'm making updates to some of my original characters, and I'm also adding new ones. So I would have had to take this collection and split it out between the new ones to do create records on that and the old ones to do an update records. But you'll notice I only have one item there. And when I hit next and go over and refresh my screen, you'll see flows added, and we've got all of our updates all using one element. So let's go check that element out and see what happened. So we've added in the Winter 25 release something that, if you're familiar with Apex, we often call upsert, but here you'll find it in Flow under your Create Records as an additional option to update existing records. So when you go in here and you have your record collection, you can enable this, and what that's going to let you do is take a whole collection, say of characters, objects, whatever, and if you make changes to it and you add things to it, all of those are going to be committed in one element in one database transaction. So importantly, when you're doing this, you need to figure out, how are we going to identify, is this an existing one or is this a new character? And by default, you can do that just using the record ID, and Salesforce will handle all that for you. But let's say I'm getting information in from a new system and I want to compare on something like the email field. That's going to be available on your standard objects for certain fields to compare against, like email and contacts. Also, if you want to do this on a custom field, so you're like, I know I'm going to store, say, an ID from an external system, and that's what I want to use to compare whether this is a create or an update, you can set a custom field and then use this option to do external ID as well. So all of that together, we often call it upsert if you're a little more techie, or create an update if you're new to this. But I think this is going to be super powerful. For those of you out there who really obsess about your limits, this is also really cool because this is one DML call. This isn't one for create and one for update. So that's also going to save you a little bit of processing power and count against your limits a little less as well. So a huge efficiency improvement. And the last thing that I want to show you is updates to Transform. Now, if you've been keeping up with Transform, I'm impressed because it has new stuff coming out every single release, but we have one that I think is going to be pretty cool for a lot of you in this release. So if I go in and I get my contacts that I just had on the left-hand side, and then I want to define my target. So what am I transforming my source data into? When I go over to my target, if you clicked this before, you would have just seen the Apex defined and the record. Now we have a lot more options that you're able to do to transform into different things, like a collection of dates, a collection of numbers, or in this case, I'm going to do a collection of text. So let's say I want to send all those emails, I want to get all those emails out of that contact. I can do a text collection, and with one click, I can map my emails and just have those as a separate collection just of my text emails, if say I want to use that new send email action. But also, unrelated to this scenario, but a pro tip and somebody, I don't remember who it was, complained to me about directly at Dreamforce and said this is such a pain. If you use the in operator and you're looking for record A in record collection B, you still had to go do a loop to convert those IDs from that record collection into a text collection. If you know what I'm talking about, you know this is annoying. If you don't worry about it. But now I can do that with one click and transform. So I can take this ID field and also map it to the text collection. And that's going to save you doing one of those little extra loops that really don't need to do. So that's what's new in data and actions for the Winter 25 release. Back to you, Carolyn.
Great job. Okay, so can we just say you're the one that's helping us get a little less loopy? Is that pretty accurate?
I think I'm getting a little more loopy, you know, just in...
I love it. So we've got some shout outs here, especially since, you know, what is carbon copy? Most people said carbon copy, blind carbon copy as the definition. But Kim said, remember back when you used carbon paper to make copies of typed documents and memos?
Do you remember? Yeah. You got to remember the actual physical carbon paper.
Yes, absolutely. So that's great. And I think the other comment here, which I think is really, really important. Squire said there's a lot of tech debt that's resolved by your first enhancement. And I think that's really important. We're constantly looking for those improvements.
Absolutely.
Because we talk about efficiency with these flows. And so, great That's
Love
wonderful.
to
All
hear
right,
that,
so let's
Squire.
get to your questions. You're in the hot seat.
All
So, transform, is it going to replace loops?
I think it completely replacing loops is a long ways away, but I think our goal is we've heard from a lot of customers that loops can be sort of onerous. It's a lot of extra clicks, it's extra elements. Again, for simple things like I just want to get some IDs out of there. And we're also able to, in Transform, do some things more efficiently because we kind of know exactly what you're trying to do in advance. So what we're doing is looking for those use cases that could be in loops and trying to pull them out into Transform, kind of use case by use case.
So this is just an evolution
Right,
and use
evolution.
case based. So sharing those use
Right.
cases.
Loops aren't going away. We just have heard from many of you that they can be kind of overkill,
Yes.
say, for some things.
And not just transform, but like you brought up the in operator.
Right, that was another big-
something you always had to use loops for. So we're always on the lookout for things that we could make a lot easier for you. Like loops make everything possible, and then things like transform and in operators and some other stuff we have on the roadmap is like these very, very common use cases we want to be much easier for you to accomplish.
Absolutely.
That's great. And so going back to the emails, because that lit up our chat. So when should I use the send email action and when should I use email alerts?
That's a great question, and it's, I think, kind of a personal preference. I've talked to a lot of admins who prefer one or the other, and there isn't necessarily a right answer. For those of you who aren't familiar, email alerts are available as a separate thing in setup. So you would go outside of Flow, go to your email alerts, set up and configure your email, and then you can call that as an invocable action from Flow. We also have an invocable action called send email inside Flow, and that you would configure all the things like to CC, BCC, the content, all inside of Flow. And I've heard from some admins that they really like it being separate because maybe they have people on their team who aren't comfortable in Flow, but they do a lot of email updates. Others are like, I'm a solo admin, I want to stay in Flow and write that email as fast as possible. So I really think it should be more about how you work. And again, we're always trying to make sure to kind of match up the feature set so you're not having to choose based on, again, some of these limitations like the 5 people to send to. But
Great. And so trying to help cover a lot of different work styles and use cases just in the work too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, you also mentioned some of the enhancements don't count twice against limits. There's more processing power. But then there's the question, is the 150 email limit separate for the 2 CC and BCC, or is it all one?
that's all one.
Okay.
So 150 recipients, you can choose how to split that up betwin 2 CC and BCC.
Great. Well, you will be joining us in just a bit for more
Sure
questions, so stick around.
here.
If you have more questions for Diana, keep them coming. She's going to be here at the end for more Q&A, so make sure you put those in the chat. And up next, we have Antoine Cabot, Senior Director of Product Management, and he's here to show us the automation app and builder experience. Antoine, take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carolyn. All right, so let me quickly tell you about our amazing new capabilities that we're bringing into the automation app and our builder experience. And then I will show you all of that in a live demo. All right, so first is our brand new Flow validation experience. Doesn't look like super exciting, but you will really see the difference. Now when you save or activate a flow, you are going to see errors and warning in a brand new panel. So we're bringing a new panel in the builder on the left side. And not only will you be able to separate errors from warning, but we'll also give you ND links that point to the right element. So super easy to debug your flow to make sure that you can easily identify, the errors that you are making. This is really cool. This is really helpful. I've been using that for months now, and it really helps me build better flows over time. Next one is the addition of orchestrations in the automation app. So for some of you who have already used the automation app, it's a brand new Lightning app that all of you awesome admins can actually use to monitor and manage your automated processes outside of setup. So it's in one single place for everything automation. So all your flows are in there, all your orchestration are in there. So you can really dig into all those assets in a Lightning experience. Other things are very important as well, some usability improvements for orchestrations, like drag and drop capabilities for steps within a stage. You can't imagine how many people came to me at Dreamforce saying how painful it is to add steps and order them in an orchestration. So we're fixing this in the winter release, which is really, really cool. You can now copy paste steps across stages as well, which is also a very nice improvement. And last but not least, you can now customize the work guide. So for people who don't know on this call, the work guide is this Lightning components that you can put on your record page that will actually display action items generated by an orchestration and assigned to a specific user. One of the cool additions to this is that you can now hide the work guide from the page if there is no work item available. So very cool to save some space on your record page. All right, let's see them. Let's see all of that in action. So here I start from the home page in Salesforce. Very, very handy. I can quickly search for the automation app through the app launcher. And that's going to open this brand new automation app where I can see the list of all the flows that I've recently modified. I have some quick links into the Flow community, Trailblazer community, Trailhead, et cetera, et cetera. We have one tab here for flows, so I can quickly see all my flows. I can also search for them, which is something that has been asked for years, I believe, from you guys. So now you can search within your flows, and you can define also your own list views. So you can create those list views here like RL, and then define your filters. Everything you know about list views is now available for your list of flows. So really, really cool. One thing I want to really show you today is that we are adding orchestrations in a separate tab. So that's where you start looking at your automated processes. As a reminder, an orchestration is basically a combination of multiple flows with some logic between the execution of those flows. So you can create your entire process. One of them here that I built a few months ago, which is a vehicle orchestration. And I'm going to show you this on the canvas right after. But what I want to show you here is this very nice detailed page where I can see some of the key metrics that I care about, like the average runtime, the completion rate. I can see all those runs for this process below. I can see versions. And I can also click on View in Flow Builder, and that's going to open my orchestration in the builder. So I can very quickly see everything in here. From here, I have this stage called test drive, and I realized that I need to move those steps around. I really want to assign the sales agent later in this process. So what I'm going to do here is just drag and drop that step, and that's as easy as it is. Like, it is super, super simple. And eventually, if I want, I can also copy that step and paste it into a different stage in here. And then we're going to save all the configuration, everything you have set in terms of input parameters, the flow itself, etc. Everything is copied over into this new stage. Very, very cool to have that. All right, so now I'm going to navigate back into our work guide. So what I want to show here is when you take the flow orchestration work guide in Lightning App Builder, before you didn't have any configuration available. So now you can not only rename the component, who knows, if you don't like the work guide term, you are welcome to rename it. And you can also decide to show some specific orchestration details, like the run name, the stage name, the step name. And what is really, really cool is that you can now hide this work guide when there is no work item waiting for you. So these components will automatically disappear from the page if there is nothing assigned currently to the user. Switching back to our automation app, I want to show you this this new flow experience here. So I'm going to open one of the latest flow I've built, which is a nice, so you can see the detail page for a given flow. And then from here, I can open the latest version. And the reason why I was building this flow is to create some NetSuite integration. And we have a pilot running right now using this connector available in Flow to connect with NetSuite. Really cool to see. Now I can have like one single action that get information from NetSuite, creating a sales order in NetSuite with one single action. But what I realized is that I probably need the fault path, right? Because if anything goes wrong, I would certainly need to take actions from there. So I'm going to add a fault path, and then from here, I will probably use the amazing new send email action that Diana discussed before, and just say, okay, send me an email. And that's the only thing I'm going to provide. I'm just like, okay, I'm kind of lazy. I don't want to provide any additional information. So I'm just going to save this And what is going to happen is we're going to see our brand new panel here appearing on the left that shows you errors and warning. So here you can see that I can separate errors from warning. Warning will not block me. But here in that case, I want to jump into the errors, and I have a link here that say, hey, send me an email. It's probably not properly configured. So that's going to show me where the error is, and that's also going to show me what are the required value. And obviously, I need to have a body to send that email. So let's make sure to provide that. So just to show you a quick example here of the side panel configuration. And with that, I'm going to leave it back to Caroline. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Antoine, for showing that. I just have to say, I think Amal summed it up perfectly. Just wow. So that was the comment. So great job. We have a few questions for you.
Sure.
So thank you for sticking around. Help us understand, can a regular Salesforce user see my flows in the automation app?
So yes and no. It's basically up to you admins to decide what is available in the automation apps. So we will never expose those flows if you haven't given the right permission to your users. So you will have to give them permission to see flows, to see orchestrations, to see connections later on. So all of that is based on admin permissions.
Great. Thank you for that. And then following up a little bit to that is, can I create a flow from the automation app?
You can absolutely create a flow from the automation app. If you still see my screen, you just have a new button here. Right now, we are redirecting the user to the setup, which is the current experience, but expect a new experience coming in our next release, a safe harbor on this.
I love that, giving people a preview. It's awesome. So you covered this a little bit, talking about hiding work guides when there's nothing for the user to do. And we know you can, but what are some of the benefits to doing that?
So the main benefit is basically saving some real estate. We have many customers who have used that component in the past that complains that the work guide is taking a lot of space on the record page. And if there is nothing assigned to the user, if there is nothing to do, the work guide basically show there is no work for you to do. So it's kind of weird. So we realized that we better hide that component entirely when there is no work waiting for the user. So it's a bit surprising for a Lightning component to kind of disappear sometimes, but I think you will get used to it, and I think it's a lot of benefits for the end user because they have some more space to see relevant information instead of a big block that shows no work item for you.
Yeah, and it helps keep it cleaner for the user, making sure that their attention is directed to the things that they do need to do. So,
Exactly.
And then it's also that indicator for them if it does appear that they've got some work to do. So,
Totally.
Antoine, thank you so much for joining us. To everybody at home, if you have more questions for Antoine, make sure you put them in the chat and we will get them answered. Thank you again. So now we're coming back to the studio and we're gonna go to Sam Raynard, Senior Director of Product Management, and she's here to share some amazing screen flow enhancements and a legend in your own right. So welcome. Take it away.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam. I'm here to talk to you about ScreenFlow awesomeness from this release. So let's see if we got our slides up. Yeah. Unless you have been living under a rock the past year and a half, I hope that you have heard the gospel of reactivity. It is basically the new foundation for everything that is going to happen in ScreenFlows in perpetuity forever. We consider it basically the new platform. Over the past year or so, we've been really focused on enabling you to take advantage of what you already have in your screen. So components can pass their values back and forth and can respond to each other. So that was general reactivity and formulas. What we have moved on to think about more is okay, but what if you need to react to something, but you just don't have that information yet? You need to reach out to the Salesforce database, to some external system, or you need to perform some additional logic that just isn't possible within the screen. That is where we have been working on something called action buttons. We're really excited to announce this as generally available. You might have heard about it last Release Readiness Live as a beta. Basically, you can put a button on your screen. That button is going to run an auto launch flow that you or someone else from your team has built. And you basically get all the power of auto launch flows that is just supercharging any interactivity that you're trying to build into your screens. So for those of you who have been paying attention to action buttons, we do have a few changes from this release. One is you have more control over the button interactions, so you can actually conditionally disable the button so that, people aren't like running this flow over and over when you're not actually ready for them to run it. You don't have the right inputs yet. And similarly, we have an in progress loading handler, so when the action is running, they can't just like bang the button and make that flow run 70 times, which we do not want. And then the one last thing that the PM Adam White snuck in for this release is a bit of like build time quality of life enhancement, if you will. But it's basically if you are building the auto launch flow in another tab while you're actually adding it to your screen flow, you can have the inputs and outputs be updated with a nice little refresh button, which is super exciting. I don't have time to dig into a demo today, but you are in luck because on Friday, Adam White is going to be on Admin Release Readiness Live, and he is going to go into so much depth on action buttons you won't even know what to do with yourself. And if you just can't wait until then, please check out our trail mix, which is the second QR code. Adam has a great blog post that's linked from there that goes into depth on, I think it is about the beta state of action buttons, but all of that information should be enough to get you started. The second big thing I want to talk to you about today is enhancements to repeaters. Last release, I was here talking to you about repeaters being GA. It's a way to help speed up your data entry. Diana gave you a little sneak preview of the ways that repeaters can help just generating lists of data without, having to not having to revisit the same screen over and over and over again. This release, we're really excited to show you a demo of how to use existing data with your repeater. So with that, I'm actually going to move us on into my demo. All right, so I'm actually showing you the exact same flow I showed you last release, but enhanced with these new features. So again, we are working through an auto insurance policy. Last release, it was creation only because repeaters could only create new data. But now, as you can see, I have started out with Lauren Boyle's existing insurance policy, and we already have some vehicles created. So I have a Subaru, an Audi, and then 3 drivers attached to this policy. But Lauren has called in and told us that she actually wants to make a change. She's traded in her Subaru for another vehicle, and Carolyn's going to help me.
Ooh, I think she's going big. Do you have a GMC in there?
We do have a GMC.
Okay.
All right. And then we have a bunch of models in here, so I guess she's being good with the environment. We'll do the Sierra EV. Grab the black one. I'm going to assume it's a brand new guy, and then I didn't have a VIN handy, so we'll just cheat with this one. All right, and then she has no other changes. She just wanted to switch out those vehicles, so we're going to keep all the same drivers attached. When I click next, I have this summary screen I built, and this is just showing me, after I submit, this is the state of things that will be in the insurance policy. So I'll have these 2 vehicles and then the 3 drivers still. So after I submit, the flow is doing its magic. And if I come over to the app, I will see, so we still have the Subaru record in place, and that was my choice to not delete the record, but instead to mark it archived. And we have the Audi that was there before and the new GMC Sierra EV. Thanks, Carolyn. Let's get into actually how this was built, though. So since last release, some things have changed in this flow. The main first bit is that we have to get records for the vehicles and the drivers that are associated with the insurance policy if the policy already exists. The real meat of this is in the screen, so let's focus on the vehicles repeater. We've added this new configured data source section. So this is how you're going to provide data to be populated into the repeater. So we have the vehicles that were queried from that get records earlier. You'll notice we have this unique identifier for items. If you are later going to be taking the results of this repeater and trying to update or delete things, you need an ID. We are passing that through for you automatically so that you don't have to expose that ID to your customers on the repeater visually. That just seems silly to us. How you get the data from the collection that you brought in actually mapped into the components is going to be very similar to the regular ways that you would set your values, but we tried to make it a little bit more obvious which one it is. So if you know the name of the collection, you can just type it as usual, but if you are not sure, look for repeater pre-populated items in the resource picker, and this is the collection that belongs to the repeater, and then I have access to all of the fields directly. So if I'm setting year, at this point I can map it into the year field. So then at runtime, as you saw in the demo earlier, for each item that exists in the collection, for each vehicle that was grabbed from the database, we are going to generate one instance of the repeater, and then we are going to use whatever mappings you supplied in the components to say which fields should go where. The other major change with this enhancement is we are still, unfortunately, using loops for repeaters. I'm sorry we couldn't quite get transform support yet. It is on my list. It's going to be so much easier to deal with this once you have that. So we're still looping. Within loops, you'll see instead of just one sub-collection where previously we had, I think, added items or all items last release, I can't remember. Now we have 4. Removed items, hopefully pretty self-explanatory. This is going to be the list of all the things that your user removed that were pre-populated or were existing. And then the other 3 are more focused on what was on the screen. So if you want to do the old school way, you can work with added items and go do a create. You can work with pre-populated items and go and do an update. But we would highly recommend that instead you do all items, which is going to be the combination of those 2. And then you use what Diana just demoed earlier. Sorry, it would be so nice if we had scrolling, wouldn't it? And using our upsert or our create and update at the same time, let Flow figure out which things need to be updated out of this collection. So I've used all items for both vehicles and drivers, and so I'm just supplying all of the things to this create records, and based on the record ID, which the repeater was passing down for us, we can tell which ones need to be created and which ones updated. And you just have one node and one DML operation, which we love. We love saving limits. Right, that's a wrap on my repeaters demo. And so I have one more slide because there are a couple of things I want to leave you with as kind of nice little bits in the release. The first thing is if you're using choice lookup or lookup components in Flow in general, we have added multi-select support to the choice lookup component. It is actually going to be the first choice component that you can choose to make it single or multi-select, which I think is very cool, and I want to do more of that with more choice components in the future. But generally, it's going to look much like how our other lookup component does when you put in multi-select mode. The second thing is an enhancement to how custom components get rendered in the screen editor from a preview point of view. We heard a lot of feedback from the community that what we had wasn't enough. All it was telling me was, oh, this is a toggle, or this is a quick choice, or this is a data table, but I have 6 of them in the same screen and I can't tell which job each of them is doing, especially if I didn't build the screen myself or I built it 6 months ago. So now we are exposing the label or the API name of that specific component that you or your team member built, so you can better understand, hopefully, if the label and API name are well done, which job that it's doing for you. And that is a wrap for me.
Wow. Okay. So I have to take a beat because the chat is going crazy with the love of the new features. And I knew this would happen, but as my first Flow show, I feel like I have to give you all the props that are coming in. So here's some of my favorites. Squire says, feeding repeater elements with queried data is so amazing. Every enhancement to this space makes my life as an admin so much better. So that is amazing. And then this other one, already excited with all the new Flow features. All the pain points have been addressed in Flows of Winter 25.
All right, I'm gonna go home.
So you two can take vacation. Okay.
I'm tired now.
And then this one's great. David says sections in repeaters will be mint when it happens. So vote it. You got to put it up. Yeah,
True.
Absolutely. So as you can tell, we are in San Francisco. We are in the tower. So if you do hear noises, those are live. We're not piping them in. So and Andrew wants to know, where's your lamp?
It's still at home, so you can't bring the lamp every time. Otherwise, it's not special. It is serving its purpose as a lamp.
I love it. I love it.
Maybe I'll bring get a little lamp
Maybe
pin.
Andrew will get you a lamp T-shirt.
Yeah.
He's good at
or like a
t-shirts.
little mini lamp that's a little easier to carry on Bart here. Just something maybe a little less unwieldy, but the lamp is still very much in use.
So
as
great.
A lamp.
Yeah, I've heard Andrew's good at t-shirts. Okay, so last but not least, product manager Vidya Ravagendra is here to show us Einstein for Flow. You can't wait for this one. How you can build processes quickly using AI prompts. So over to you, Vidya.
Thanks, Carolyn, and thank you so much, Diana, Antoine, Sam. Those were 3 really hard acts to follow, really 3 legends, so hoping that this goes just as well. But super excited, everyone, to share our brand new updates to Einstein Drafted Flows, which help you quickly build flows with just the aid of natural language prompts. So plain English, we're trying to make flow building simpler than it's ever been before. So all you need to do is describe the flow that you'd like to build, and Einstein will use our in-house LLM, which, quick aside here, I just want to mention, it's trained on best practices, never touches customer data. This is so important to us. Feel free to ask more questions about that to create a fully editable draft flow. So we've heard from both experienced and newer admins that Einstein for Flow helps with ramping up on how to build flows and also ensures that you're not starting from scratch, which I don't know about you, but for me, that's super, super important. And yeah, we're just really, really excited about the positive reception that we've already seen with the beta program so far. And we can't wait to make this product generally available in the spring. We've already shipped the ability for customers to build flows with both standard and custom objects. I hope folks have been trying it out and giving us feedback on it. And most recently, we made improvements to our AI model, making it more performant and more accurate. And we're going to be shipping our brand new edit a prompt feature, which I'm going to be demoing a little bit. And I love this feature. I hope you guys do too. We're also on the cusp of releasing a much awaited, much requested feature in the next release, which is flow summarization. So that's coming up around the horizon. Feel free to ask more questions about it. That's going to be really, really cool and a game changer. But before I move on, I just want to make sure to point out this really awesome customer quote that made me really happy on what we have so far. So no matter how skilled you are at Flow, it's easier to have something to start with than to start from scratch. So that was a lot. That was a lot of descriptions of the new features that we have, but that's not all. To top it all off, we're also releasing Einstein drafted formulas in beta this release. So when you're in Flow Builder and you're editing or creating an element and you need a formula, we now have the capability to type in a prompt and have Einstein handle the actual formula building part for you. So with this improvement, what we see is fewer mistakes, less context switching, less second guessing. And I think this feature is really awesome. I'll be demoing this as well. But super quick aside before I get into demoing, if you want to get your hands on this or Einstein drafted flows, please make sure you have the Einstein 1 license. Talk to your AEs. We would love for you to try this out and give us as much feedback as possible. Okay, so now for the fun part. I'm going to go ahead and hop into our first demo of Einstein for Flow. So the first thing we do is we create a new flow. And you can see here we have the option to let Einstein help you build. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. So you can see here that we can get started with some sample prompts and try these out. So these also give you some really great examples of how to write a good prompt. And a major key of this product and making sure that you're leveraging it well is making sure that you're writing a really awesome prompt. So feel free to ask more questions about that. But it is something that really is a game changer when using Einstein for flow. But I pasted in my own prompt, which is using some interesting custom objects. Create a flow that sets the bike build MSRP to 3000 when the category is equal to cyclocross and Grupo is equal to Ramforce. And if you don't know what this means, this is a prompt for the bike enthusiasts who are potentially in the audience. So shout out to you guys. All right, so we create that draft flow, watch it generate. And once our draft flow has been created, what we should be able to do is go ahead and click into each element to see that they do in fact match the description that we provided. So starting with the start element. What we see here is that category is cyclocross and Grupo is SRAM Force. So perfect, exactly what we stipulated in our prompt. Now we should be able to click into our update record and see that MSRP is in fact 3000. So literally perfect, exactly what we wanted. But what if we wanted to edit our instructions and maybe change things up a bit? So let's try setting MSRP to like 6,000, for example. And for those of you who don't know, MSRP is suggested price, so this is quite the expensive bike. But we're going to go ahead and create this flow anyway and just make sure that it does in fact do what we expect it to. This is the real test. Clicking into the element and seeing that MSRP is now 6,000 will tell us that this feature did work. So fingers crossed, everyone. And yes, it's 6,000, exactly what we wanted. But if for some reason you wanted to switch back, you can always just use the arrows over here, and your previous flow will go ahead and generate. So you can see I verify by going into the update element and see that it's once again 3000. So perfect. That is a very quick overview of editing. But I wanted to point out a couple of other things here as well. You can give us feedback with the thumbs up and thumbs down. If Einstein, for whatever reason, didn't quite meet your needs, you can click on the thumbs down and go ahead and explain why here. Tell us a little bit more and give us feedback so we can improve the experience. This is so important to me as we work on developing towards GA, so please, please do this. You can also go ahead and copy the prompt and save it. Safe Harbor, we're working on some more sophisticated ways to save a prompt and save it in your description, but just a little sneak peek. We can talk about that later if folks have questions. And of course, if for some reason you want to redesign, feel free to just go ahead and start over. And that was the power of Einstein for Flow and our brand new editor prompt feature. And that's not all though. I have one more demo, and this one is also pretty quick, but very powerful. So what we're doing here is starting with a sample record triggered flow. And this is triggered whenever a new contact is created. So what we want to do in this example case is grab the email of the contact and save only the domain under the description. So in order to do this, we need a formula. So I'm going to create a resource right here. Data type is text. Let's call it something simple like get domain. Okay. So this is where Einstein drafted formulas really comes into play and does the work for me. So I can go ahead and just click on the sparkle icon on the right-hand side of the formula builder and enter a natural language description to tell you exactly what I just said. So that is, in this case, return what is in insert a resource email after the symbol. Cool. Okay, so I can go ahead and click create, and that should pop up in this box over there. Okay, I see it right here. We have to make sure to check the syntax to make sure it's valid. Okay, looks good. So we can go ahead and click done. And last but not least, we can go ahead and use this formula as the value for our description. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. That was our awesome new Einstein drafted formulas feature coming to you very soon. And now I can go ahead and pass it back to you, Carolyn. Hope that was helpful.
That was awesome. Thank you, Vidya. As we knew, viewers have questions. If you do have more, please go ahead and post them in Salesforce Plus. But let's talk a little bit about maximizing chances of Einstein producing a relevant, usable flow. How do I write a good prompt?
That is such a good question and something that I think about a lot as well. Writing a really great prompt starts often with the words, things like create or generate, being really specific about the type of flow that you want to build. And you saw with the prompt that I just put together for the demo, if you have custom objects, make sure to really include all of those, be as detailed as you possibly can, specify names. Also, another thing I'll note is it's always really helpful to have a human in the loop to review your flows for correctness, especially if you're touching customer or org data. It's just always, LLMs can always hallucinate. That's just the nature of how they work. So it's just always, I think, good to have that extra layer of protection in there.
Yeah, so being very specific, it sounds like the first piece of advice. Making sure you're placing guardrails is the second piece of advice. And then having a human in the loop and checking is the third thing. So those in combination should help you produce some relevant and usable flows. Okay, so we always have questions around data and models. So what kind of data do you use and how was the model built and how is it trained?
This is also a great question. I also would be curious about this. First of all, we use an in-house model that was created and tested entirely by our awesome AI research team. The backbone of the model is Mistral Nemo, and it's fully trained on data that we also create in-house as well. And we remain very firmly committed to never training our LLMs on our customers' data, as I mentioned, which means that this is quite the iterative process. So for things like flow generation, flow summarization, things like that, we make sure to create our own use cases, our own prompts, our own resulting flows, and make sure to test against those in a very thorough way. So that all happens in-house. We never use customers' data for that.
Zero copy is super important when it comes to this because you're taking actions and automations around that data. So your trusted, protected data within Salesforce. So that helps too. Actually, I have a online question for you. Sarita wants to know, how complex can Einstein for Flow get?
That's a great question. So we're definitely, as I mentioned, like the training process a little bit, we're working on more and more sophisticated use cases. So I mentioned already that you can use standard and custom objects. There's actually no element limit. The last time we presented RRL, I think we did have an element limit. So it's cool that we're able to expand beyond that now. That's super awesome. You can use things like formulas, subflows. So there's all sorts of things that you can do. There are also things that folks have suggested that, and by the way, please feel free to keep adding things to the idea exchange so we get more and more of this feedback. But we hear you. There are definitely things that you guys want to be able to do that we don't have the capacity to do quite yet. But we're absolutely working on training our model with more and more sophisticated use cases. And yeah, feel free to give us more suggestions as we get towards GA.
Great, and I think we also love to hear from customers on what they're doing and what's working, what they're testing. So how can people give you that feedback? So I love to see customers playing with these new features and then giving us ways that we can tell everybody else what they're doing. So how would you like them to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Idea exchange is absolutely the best way. Also, for those of you who are already using these features, that thumbs up, thumbs down, especially the thumbs down. I actually like to see the areas where we can really improve. And if you give us more detail around that, we would love to see it too. And for those of you who don't yet have it, like I said, please make sure to get the Einstein 1 SKU and try it out for us.
Yes. All right. I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback from online. Dan, and I'm going to try and get this right. He just says, love with lots of letters. So he absolutely loves it. And then Mitch also said Einstein drafted flows is made for Mitch. So get in there. Tell us all about it. Can't wait to hear. So final question for you. Since you're new to the team, which I never would have guessed, what has been the coolest thing about working on Einstein for Flow?
I love this question. First of all, obviously having amazing colleagues like Diana, Sam, and Antoine. The Flow team is amazing, but also being able to interact with the Flownatics. I was at Dreamforce, and while I was new to the team then, just hearing about how much y'all love the platform, how much you're so dedicated to the different features, and the feedback that I got on the new product that I'm on has just been amazing. So please keep it up. Please feel free to give me feedback. And yeah, we want to put out the best product possible in GA.
Yes, great. Actually, there's one more question. I'm not going to let you off that easily because Naveen has a really good question. Can we create orchestrations and other flow types using Einstein for Flows?
Right now, we can't use Orchestrator with Einstein for Flow, and that's something that we can absolutely think about a little bit more. Like I mentioned, we want to add more sophisticated use cases to the roadmap, but it is quite the iterative process in terms of training. But please do, I will note that down, and please do add that to the idea exchange as well.
Great. Vidya, thank you so much. We will turn you loose. Really, really appreciative of all of your work and sharing that with the audience. So thank you, thank you. All right, we've been getting a lot of questions, so I'm going to navigate this iPad. We want to welcome back Diana and Sam to get some of these questions answered. So I'm going to start with Sam. Because repeaters came up a lot in the fun.
Would you say it came up repeatedly?
Woo! Look at you. I love this.
Diana's
Yes.
always got the puns.
So giving a little preview, what's next for repeaters?
What is next for repeaters? So a couple of things that I really want to deliver. One of them is, I mentioned in the demo, is adding support for the repeater outputs in Transform, because I think it's going to make it so much easier to deal with those outputs, and we all hate loops with fiery passion. They are sometimes necessary, and we could make them less necessary. And then the other thing is actually something that was mentioned in another question, which is allowing sections and repeaters to interplay with each other. One of the biggest requests that the most frequent request I've heard since launching repeaters is that you all want the ability to do multi-column layouts inside of repeaters. Diana asked me that yesterday
when my demo the other day.
Yep, when she was building her demo. So
requests don't always come from the community. Sometimes they come from inside the house.
Yes. So those are kind of like two really big top of mind things. Some other things further out that I'm thinking more about is, adding support with pre-filled for external data. So right now it only supports Salesforce-based collections. Things like I really want to make repeaters support reactivity more fully. So adding support for reactive formulas actually requires that we basically create this idea of a resource as contextual. So in order for us to make it so that you can have a reactive formula inside of a repeater that's responding to other things inside the repeater, the formula has to know that it belongs to the repeater and can't be used in other places. And so this thing that sounds like so straightforward is actually a whole infrastructure mess that we have to solve.
Well, and it's funny because being a user for so long, I sit on the other side of it going, this is so awesome. It's like magic. And then I see what you all do to build it and then what our admins and devs do to make it a reality. It's pretty funny because I just sit there, I'm like, this is so easy. So it's great. All right, we are going to shift gears and I'm coming to the other side of the table. Right. Any plans to allow entry horizontal editing in, that's for Sam. Sorry. Any plans to allow entry horizontal editing the table?
For data table?
Mm-hmm. Can I read it? You can.
If this is about inline edit for data table is something we do want to do. We are, and I'm trying to remember if the reason we haven't done that is it might be because of some base component support issues we have. We use the data table lightning base component, so some of the things like having pick list and I think lookup field support are because data table doesn't support it, and others are we haven't had time to prioritize it, and I cannot remember which one that is to be honest, but it is absolutely on Adam White's list for things that we want to do to data table.
So I'll bookmark that conversation for Friday. Awesome.
Yes, just send that question to the admin list.
Yeah, I'll add that to it. Okay, Diana, over to you. Is there only one comparator, or could we do last name and external ID?
There is only one.
Okay.
So otherwise, you would have to do the logic of if one's there, one's not there. What if they're different? There, you get into a lot of
sounds like another loopy issue.
Loopy issues.
Yes. Okay, so is the upsert functionality available only for ScreenFlow or for other types as well?
No, it's available for all the core major flow types. I think there's
probably not field service mobile, but
mobile,
everything else I would expect.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, now we're going back to Sam. There's only two of you here, so I just get to keep going. Yes. These are always my favorite. Best practices or tips you can share about how to use repeaters without creating duplicate sets of data. So if someone decides to move back and forth between a ScreenFlow multiple times, how does that
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that using upsert or this like try and have Flow figure out which things need to be updated based on like is there a matching record is a really good starting point. If you are, I wouldn't be so worried about like backwards and forwards navigation if like we had filled in some stuff and we moved forward and then you go back and make a change to that data again. It's just like you're still making it, we're still working with like what is the latest data. That said, generally in our overall like ScreenFlow best practices is after you have data operations happening, after you have like a create or update or delete happening, we highly recommend not allowing the user to go back over that. So if I have like a screen where I'm taking stuff in and I'm creating a record and then I have a confirmation screen, I want to turn off the back button on that confirmation screen because I am telling you what has been created. The way that I built the repeater demo was I put the confirmation screen before the DML happened. So it's a chance to like, that's why I left the back button on because then I could go back and like, oh, I didn't mean the GMC Sierra EV, I meant like the regular Sierra that's not an EV or something, and I can make the change. But it is in our like ScreenFlow best practices that like after you do a create or an update, like don't let your user go back because you are going to end up in this situation where you have duplicate data or you're deleting the wrong things or whatever.
Okay, great. We are coming back to Diana here. Recommendation. Squire wants to know, what's a recommendation for a team's first opportunity to convert a loop to a transform? So where should they start?
Oh.
Everyone should start here response is what we're looking for.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Wow. I think there's probably people in the chat who might have some ideas too that might be even better. I mean, that ID loop one, I think if you're using in operator already, that's a really simple one. You probably have a dedicated loop that's just doing that. So that's why I really like that tip, and it's pretty straightforward.
It applies to most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I would say sort of like record, if you're kind of record collection mapping between the same object, that can be really manual, and you have to go through each assignment and remember, make sure you have all the fields, things like that. So that would be another one where I would say it's just really nice visually to get all those lines in there, and you can kind of scan and know what things are happening. I think those are two places where I would start with transform.
Great.
Do you have any other?
For loop specifically. The thing that's coming to mind is an assignment replacement, not a loop replacement. But like we actually have done some performance testing and transform was like 10x more performant than a loop was. And so even if you're doing like really basic things inside of your loop, it's worth considering like if transform is capable of handling this use case, it may be worth it just for the efficiency gains and like cleaning up your canvas.
Yeah, both of those.
Helps with the scroll.
See?
I'm getting there. All right. Let's stay with you, Diana.
Sure.
Jeff Green said, I'm glad flow validation is looking a little easier to use. Is there any plan to specifically add unit testing for flows, or is it still going to be roll your own on that?
Well, that sounds familiar to a question that was asked a few weeks ago at True to the Core. At Dreamforce. That I think was a broader question than this one, but I would definitely tell people to check that out if they missed True to the Core, because I think Alex Edelstein gave a more broad answer, but I would say we have heard loud and clear from the community that even more than just unit testing, but the entire kind of life cycle. We're putting all this really powerful new capabilities into Flow. You can automate more and more, and you do need to be able to test more and more to make sure that that automation has high quality, isn't going to break, isn't breaking each other, all of those things. So that is absolutely an area of focus. I can tell you, Sam and I were passing around sticky notes last week talking about this, so it is an active topic of conversation.
It's great. Great. Okay, Sam, coming back to you. Will lookup components be available for mobile soon in ScreenFlow?
Are they not now? That's I'll have to look into that about why it isn't working.
So so we'll check
Yeah,
if
so
they're available. And
we will.
Yeah.
I will look into that.
Okay.
For the trouble is that we have 3 lookup components. There is kind of the one that is just called lookup, and it is based on like a relationship field. That one, I think, as far as I understand, it does work in mobile, and if it doesn't, it's something to do with whatever the underlying base component is that we're using, and that is generally going to be the problem with most of our like responses to mobile questions. Is like not all of it's in our control. Then there's the choice lookup component, which also should be supported in mobile, and yeah. So my general answer is like I am confused by this question and need to look into,
All right,
into it.
I'll mark
but
that
I
one.
expect them to work in mobile.
I'll mark that one, and we will make sure
Yeah.
we get that answer because it sounds like we need a little bit of research. So that's not a problem at all. Diana, lots of questions about email limits. I think it's exciting for people. Are the email limits for how many emails we can send via automations increasing as well?
They are not. That's the short answer. I would say the longer answer is generally we're calling into email capabilities that exist on the platform that are maintained by other teams and used in multiple places. So generally, an ID exchange item for that, we would recommend filing on email and not on Flow. Sometimes it gets a little confusing. Sometimes we find things in other parts. So that's why I just like to tell folks, so an increase in limits like that should probably go through the email team.
This is why it's very valuable for ideas to be granular.
Yes.
Rather than like a list of like 5 to 10 items that you wish were better about Flow email, like a very specific idea about like I want to have higher limits for this very specific thing, and then we can route that to the correct team or like get it merged in with an idea that is relevant to like actually how we would solve that problem.
Exactly.
That is great advice. Sam, I think we're going to come to you with the final question I see. Is there a plan to help prevent duplicates on the repeater if a user attempts to add a duplicate in the single transaction? So different than the back button, but going back to the insurance example, what if the user attempts to add the same Sierra twice at the same time?
Yes. So that's a very interesting question. I don't have current plans for it, but I definitely understand the use case and will think about it. I can see like, in particular, we have talked in the past about like a product return scenario, and I can definitely see something like this of like you have a list of all the products that are returnable, and once you select it for one repeater, it shouldn't be selectable in the other. And I'm guessing in order to do that, we need significantly more reactivity to be supported in repeaters.
And also something like a unique identifier. A VIN number in your example is a unique identifier and doesn't repeat itself. So having those things will also help.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
So I just have to say it has been a pleasure. And I am so excited that you all, I see the reactions from the audience. There's a reason why y'all are the favorites sometimes. So even though we are wrapping up this particular show, you can still ask your questions in the Trailblazer community. Hashtag Salesforce RRL. We'll make sure you get an expert answer, and thank you so much for watching. As always, we look forward to your feedback. It helps us improve and create the content that you want. So scan the QR link on this screen to take a short survey. As a thank you, you'll be entered into our sweepstakes to win one of 5 Salesforce certification vouchers. And we've got more on Winter 25 tomorrow. We'll be back with our developer preview at 9 a.m. Pacific time, followed by Service Cloud at 11. And we'll round out the day with our bonus episode featuring Health Cloud at 1:30 p.m. Pacific. And then come back on day 3 for CRM analytics and our admin preview, or catch all of RRL on Salesforce Plus. Coming up later this month, discover Agentforce, what AI was meant to be. You don't want to miss this, so scan the QR code on your screen to register now. The live launch event kicks off on Salesforce Plus on October 29th at 9 a.m. Pacific. Hear from companies that are using autonomous agents to take action and drive results 24/7, and get ready to build your own. You won't want to miss it. I'm Carolyn Bathauer, and we'll catch you next time in the cloud.